Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everybody and all our viewers. Today we welcome you on behalf of the World Muslim Communities Council. My name is Naima Hussein Al-Qut. I'm joining you from South Africa as a youth member of the TWMCC. And today, inshallah, we'll be hosting a program on reviving African Islamic traditions to confront current challenges. So I myself am very excited being an African Muslim. I'm very excited about the program today, inshallah. And we have a really great panel of speakers that are going to give us a lot of insight, inshallah. To begin, I'm going to welcome our chairman of the World Muslim Communities Council, to welcome everybody, Dr. Ali Rashid Al-Nuaimi. Please, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'll speak in Arabic. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah.
In the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful, praise be to Almighty Allah, and peace be upon Prophet Muhammad, the master of the ancient and the modern in all times and all humans at all times. Your eminences, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome each and every one of you in this forum with which we conclude the activities and webinars of Ramadan, and definitely we look forward to this wonderful conclusion. We are happy to speak in this blessed day and this blessed night. We are happy to speak about the Islamic affairs in Africa. No doubt everyone knows that this great religion, Islam, has a major role to play in the development of this African continent and to promoting the civilization in Africa, and also to highlight Africa as a prevalent component in humanity and progress and the march towards development for the entire human race. Humans in Africa, do have a rich heritage. However, the Muslims in Africa have a very rich heritage, and they have encompassed many African nations, and Islam encompassed all of them, and this great religion managed through its tolerance and its flexibility. Islam managed to encompass the African culture, whether it is tribal African culture or the national African culture or regional culture in certain regions of Africa. Through interaction among the different Islamic values and different Islamic principles and the heritage and the cultural heritage of these tribes and African nations, Islam has had its peculiar nature in Africa, which really makes them stand out, as Islam managed to provide and project a very positive image, which underscores the values of peaceful coexistence and tolerance and compassion and mercy as well. However, nowadays we are witnessing many challenges at the global arena, including Africa, of course, which is facing major challenges. One of the major challenges that the entire world is witnessing and facing nowadays is the hijacking of religion and the hijacking of the minds and hearts of Muslim young people through extremist and terrorist concepts and ideas, and promoting those ideas and extremist ideas among Muslim young people. Unfortunately, this is something that has spread in the Muslim world, and Africa was no exception in this case. Because of the globalization and the intermingling between Africa and the rest of the world, whether the Arab world or the other parts of the world. Here, I would like to highlight that the normal heritage in Africa for Islam and the Islamic heritage in Africa is moderate by nature, is leaning towards peacefulness and tranquility. It rejects any type of polarization and hatred. Therefore, we can barely find anyone from those who have been committed to the African Islamic heritage who have joined such extremist groups. Those who joined extremist groups, we will find that they first and foremost disavowed themselves and detach themselves from this Islamic heritage in Africa. That is why it is highly important to invest into this Islamic cultural heritage in Africa and to continue to boost the role of Islam in Africa and in different mosques and small mosques, and also to boost the role played by the Sufi approaches and the Sufi sects, which can take the lead as they are quite moderate and can look after Muslim young people. Because when they conducted the role properly, we would see that Muslim young people in Africa were fully committed to the principles of Islamic religion, and also they projected a correct image of Islam, an image marked by peacefulness, mercy, and positivity as well, being keen on building their own communities and contributing actively to enhancing the community and building their own nation. That is why it is highly important to return to this heritage and to extract the best values from this heritage and to focus mainly on ensuring that some positive practices that we do need today and represent a key element of the Islamic heritage, we should be keen on protecting and preserving them so they would not completely melt into the communities. We need these specific values to provide care and to look after our young people in Africa, and also to face all the calls for the deviation from sublime values, which are quite spreading nowadays. That's why I call upon the eminences, the sheikhs, to focus on the peculiar nature of Islam in Africa through the cultural heritage that Islam has in Africa, and stressing the need for continuous support for the great values that have been embraced by our brothers in Africa to protect Islam and to introduce Islam and to raise children to embrace moderate Islam through the different Islamic centers and mosques. I wish you all the best in this webinar, and I wish you all the best, and I supplicate Almighty Allah to accept your fasting and your prayers, and also to accept your good deeds throughout Eid al-Fitr. Thank you, and peace be with all of you. Peace be with you.
Dr. Ali, for that wonderful introduction, mashallah. A reminder to all our viewers that we do have interpretation available. For those English speakers, we have the translation, and for the Arabic speakers, please look at the link and you can get the translation as well, inshallah. A few important things. My Arabic is not as good as yours, Dr. Ali, but from what I've managed to grasp is the importance of, holding on to the roots of Islam that were developed and established in Africa. And, as African Muslims, we have a responsibility to ensure we follow on those roots and we establish Islam the way it was in the time of the golden era, when Islam was at the forefront of many, many sectors. So inshallah, we're looking forward to the rest of the session today. We do have a slight change in our schedule. We've had some emergency meetings with our speakers. So we're going to move on to Dr. Muntaga Diani, who's going to join us, inshallah. He's joining us from Senegal. He's a scholar and consultant. And Dr. Diani, are you with us?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. Yes, I'm with you, and thank you for inviting me. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. All is well?
Yes, alhamdulillah, all is well. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can begin.
Yeah.
Bismillah.
All right. So thank you, everyone. I just want to share my screen first because I have a presentation in PowerPoint, and I hope that you guys will be able to see it properly. You let me know if it is displaying.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
All right, inshallah. So thank you very much. Actually, I want to start by expressing my best wishes for this holy month to all Muslim communities. We are entering the last day of Ramadan. This last day are key and valuable, as Ramadan as one of the 5 pillars and commonly observed in Muslim tradition. I can say that this is actually a blessed month and help that togetherness that Dr. Ali just mentioned. So in regards to my presentation, I wanted to focus mostly on one principle that is key that we find on some, in Senegal mostly, but in a lot of West African countries as well. That's the notion of collective responsibility. Through fasting, individuals have a time of self-reflection, as they say, and a sense of togetherness, sense of sharing, that we come together with our collective responsibility. So whenever I will mention that notion of collective responsibility, that's in a nutshell, how actually we can share not only our moral values, but our sense of action towards the community. So I will focus my intervention on two aspects. First of all, going on the sense of collective responsibility and how it is embedded to the Senegalese tradition. And the other one would be to illustrate with some example with the practice of collective responsibility. And throughout, you'll see, as I often used to do on my presentation, several images that I would be happy to comment on later on. So I want to start as well with saying in Wolof, that is our common language here in Senegal, when they say nit nitay garabam. So that's mean the remedy for human being, it's humanity, right? Dr. Ali mentioned the hurdles and the conflict, the problem that humanity are facing nowadays, whether it be international with all happenings, but as well with COVID-19 that really show that many of us struggle with that. But with that saying, what is more important is to go back actually to our human value. And this saying is really important within the Senegalese community, because going back to what I said earlier, within the Ramadan, we know that one must seek through this monthly journey of Ramadan and these sacred months, a self-reflection on how to ban selfishness, that jihadul nafs, that of desire that we all know, and the idea of more blending to the service of the community and be at service. So nit nitay garabam, that's mean in a nutshell as well, that we have to help each other, and that will give us that balance. So through fasting, we have a sense of sharing, but as well, that's a collective of responsibility. So historically, I do not want to go too much in the history, but just in a background, as we know, Islam in Senegal came out in several ways, but mostly towards the 12th centuries throughout North Africa. West Africa as well experienced that spreading of Islam, and that embeds in a lot of community through those fast and glorious empire that we know before colonization. But today, the Islam in Senegal, the main seal is pluralism. So whenever we talk about pluralism, that's different. The constitution in Senegal is towards the secularism. You'll find around 95% of Muslim, around 3-4% of Catholics, and others are in other religion. But that's the first image, actually. I just will go back quickly. When you see one representative of the member of Islamic community, another one is from the Catholic, that are sharing to religious event, meals, practice, because they want to come together, although they have on different beliefs. And that's exactly the idea of that pluralism that we found in Senegal. So to go back to Islam itself in Senegal, there's 4 large Sufi brotherhoods that we can find out in Senegal, whether it be the Adria, that's the oldest one, found in Baghdad, by the Abdul Qadir al-Jilani that spread to Senegal. You'll have as well the Tijani, that is lastly the largest one that came within Morocco, but as well in Algeria. When I was talking about the north part, that's the aspect, the Murid, where I will focus mostly my presentation today. That is a Senegalese Islamic leader, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. So saying and practice derived from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there's a lion that are a smaller Sufi order centered mostly in the north and in the capital city of Dakar. That's the image that you are seeing, that they all wear in white, because that's also the sense of equality. That's the sense of purity. A lion to come to Allah, one God, uniqueness, but as well celebrating during the event really just by wearing white, to go back to that sense of that we are unique in ourselves, but as well as belonging to a community, we have to help each other. So this is a general map where you see mostly where you'll find sacred cities. Of course, Muslim, as I've mentioned, 95% are spread throughout all the territory, but you could see on the picture that is mostly focused on the west side and as well central side of Senegal. Senegal throughout are bordered to the north by Mauritania, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea and Mali. Mali and Guinea, some of the countries that we are hearing in the news, not in more instable aspect, but we might know that that stability also was something important and influent. So as I've mentioned, and I know that the time is really running quick, so I won't focus mostly, but just some main principle, and maybe in the discussion I can go deeper in some of the aspects. But one major importance when we talk about collective responsibility with that murid is that saying that you see below: walk as if you would never die and praise as if you would die tomorrow. So for the murids, it is really important, because the sense of work, even nowadays, because the symposium asks us as well to reflect towards the modernity, but nowadays to have a sense of purpose in life is to work that give decent life to human beings. But the murid, the way they are seeing the work is really how not only it can benefit to individual, but as well to collectivity. And the path to companionship as goodness lie in gathering. That's true gathering, through the service of the community, they would be able actually to benefit all those member of those community. And it's well put by that notion of khidmat. Khidmat in Arabic, but as well the sense in the Murid community means to serve someone, or to be devoted to the service of someone. So that's exactly where, as individual, we could share and find that balance about individual and collective responsibility. They say, Atiullah, Atiu Rasul wa uli amri minkum. So we have to obey, so follow the principle of God, follow the Sunnah of Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well those who are in authority from us. So that's mean those spiritual guides that as well are keeping the teaching of the Prophet, keeping the Islamic teaching. So the sense of respect, the sense of the elders, the sense of the leaders are some principles that are really important. And the other one is also to give back to the community, where we'll help find that balance. Now more to the practice of this notion of collective responsibility. One major element is that it is important that, first of all, the main leaders are the first one that are supporting the Khalifs themselves, the leaders. And there are several events that did occur, for instance, during the wintering season in Senegal, that a lot of families and communities don't have means to harvest, or don't have means with a lot of waters, but the Khalifa are giving money and helping each other. Another example that we can mention is a social function that what they call in Wolof Kursering Tuba, that's gathering spaces. So that's that space you'll find not only in Senegal, but as well throughout the world. A lot of Murid community would be established in the US, in Europe, but whenever you'll find one member, not only faithful from the Murid, but within Senegalese and sometimes in West Africa, that's again, that sense of helping each other. So there you can find meal, you can find help, social protection. And it's important nowadays when we are seeking that notion of belonging, that throughout those spaces, people are helping each other through good deeds. Other example, that's the image that you are seeing, is we know that how mosques are important towards the Islamic communities. And this community were able actually to build one of the biggest mosques, the largest mosque in West Africa, mainly and mostly by donation towards all individual could donate what they had. And they were able actually to build that mosque about $30 million US, and that is now a pride not only for Senegal but a lot of West Africa. So through building come with education as well, and the Murid was able actually to solve through difficulty, the material difficulty during COVID time as well, where people was mostly isolated. That togetherness, that helping each other, that is important. Some other example, and I will be towards the end of my presentation in a few, is through the social action. One important aspect is the dairas, the association. The association have a meaningful purpose within that community because, once again, as I've mentioned, it helped build that sense of belonging. As we know, in most of West African countries, community throughout Ramadan, but as well throughout the years, need to help each other. And by having these association that have the purpose of praising gods, they have during Friday, for instance, and during the sacred months, various activities that is a religious event, and women as well as youth, those are the most dynamic force that are able actually to have also meaningful action within these dairas. And it helped, once again, that togetherness that I've mentioned. So and there are so other example. Another example is the community association that called Tuba Sakhanam, that were able actually, as I've mentioned, through difficulty in life, help members of different community, not only their faithful, but as well Senegal as a whole. So sharing and helping through good deeds, as we know, that's one of the main principles in the Muslim community. We saw it more within Ramadan, and it helped balance ourselves and also balance the community. And I would like to conclude with that saying in Wolof that is called Mbolo Moy Dole, and that's mean to one strength is to gathering and to community. By gathering, by helping each other, every one of the member of that community can take good benefit of it. I thank you for your kind attention, and will be open to any more exchange and discussion later on. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Diani. It was a very interesting presentation, alhamdulillah, and very insightful into the context of Islam in Senegal. I think a lot of misconceptions there are around Islam in a lot of our African countries, and something important that you've highlighted is the importance of community within the Muslim community, having a sense of community culture, especially at times of Shahr Ramadan and Eid and all of that. So I think that's a lesson we can take for all of our countries to look at strengthening community bonds and relationships, inshallah, and see how we take that forward, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair for that. We move on now to Sheikh Muhammad Taha Sise, the Assistant Secretary General of Adria Association in Gambia.
Shema? Nama? No,
Yes.
Ahmad. Oh, okay. Yes, Cersei. Ahmad is next. Okay, Sheikh Ahmad. He's online now. So
Sheikh Ahmed here?
Yeah, but his audio is not ready. So ask Sheikh Taha Cersei to speak first. Yeah.
Okay. So Sheikh Muhammad Taha, inshallah, we can hand over to you and then we'll go back to the other speakers. We're just trying to get hold of Sheikh Taha. I see he is with us. It seems we are still struggling. Sheikh Ahmed, have you managed to get the audio? Is Sheikh Armeel Shuaib here with us? It seems we're in the meeting but not connecting. I think there might be some technical issues. Please bear with us while we try to resolve this. We're just trying to resolve the technical issues with some of our speakers. They seem to be in the meeting but having technical difficulties with sound. Inshallah, as soon as we're ready, we'll continue to the next speaker. But since we're on the topic of Islam in Africa, perhaps I can give some insight into the South African context of Islam. In South Africa, Islam came to South Africa via the Cape. A lot may know of Tuan Guru, who was one of the pioneers of Islam in South Africa. We have the Awal Masjid in South Africa in Cape Town, where the property, it was the first masjid and madrasa donated by a slave woman named Sarki van der Kaap. And Sheikh Tuan Guru had written the Quran by hand as a prisoner on Robben Island, the same prison in which Nelson Mandela was imprisoned. And this was obviously many, many years before that. During the time of colonization and slavery in South Africa. And till today, we have a very strong Muslim community in South Africa, and it continues to grow, mashallah. There's so much of da'wah efforts happening. And I think one of the lessons we learn is leading by example. And inshallah, that's how Islam will be spread. Dr. Yusuf, do we have any feedback?
Can you ask them to re-log in, because the audio is not connected. We see them their video but not audio, so we need to ask them to log in again or something. Taha is here. Let's Taha speak. Yeah.
Sheikh Taha, are you with us?
Just
Can you
one
hear?
second. He's connecting, I think. Yeah.
Okay, let's give him a moment.
Our interpreter, please, can you speak in Arabic? Tell Sheikh Ahmad Badawi to log in again, use his phone or computer so that he can connect the audio. Or Wajudin Badawi, if you speak Arabic, can you tell them to reconnect, but because the audio is not on. Yeah.
دكتور أحمد برجاء الخروج ثم العودة مرة أخرى تسجيل الدخول لحل مشكلة الصوت.
I think everybody's audio is not on. Even Sheikh Taha, he's lost his audio. Now Sheikh Ahmed is online, you can see. Yeah. Just 1 second. Now, yeah, Sheikh Taha, can you speak now? Your audio is on now. Can you open your microphone? Yeah, Sheikh Taha. Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah. Alaikum salam. Yes. Please. Your voice is very low. Can you be loud or turn on the volume, please? Now it's good. Yeah.
Now?
Yes, better.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you everyone. سأتكلم إن شاء الله باللغة العربية.
I will speak in Arabic language. I would like to say thank you very much for your kind investigation for me to come and speak today. And I would like to thank also Dr. Ali Rashid Al-Nuaimi today, inshallah. What Dr. Mustafa said.
Sheikh Ahmed Badawi, his audio is not on.
Sheikh Ahmed.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, Sheikh Taha, we can hear you. You can continue.
Okay, inshallah. I was saying that what
كنت أقول أن ما تفضل به الدكتور مصطفى من السنغال وفي
Alhamdulillah. But I will come, inshallah, in another aspect that will help the Africa and particularly West Africa to go back to what we call in Arabic we use the local term here in Gambia and Senegal, Magali. It plays a big role, mashallah.
Sorry, can I ask Sheikh Ahmed to log in again, please? Sorry, Sheikh Taha, you can speak in Arabic. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah.
Okay. طيب بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كنت أقول أن الحقائق في السنغال وغامبيا.
I was talking that with the facts here, it's similar in Senegal and in Zambia. But what's important that in the past, what was a road for unity and peace. This is very important. And as Dr. Rashid said, we need to retain to these facts and principles in order to unify and peace and live in peace. But first, we need to know what is the main reason that get us from this unity. First, we see that the studies, it was helping the students and the Muslims to unify and also to have a mutual understanding. Why? Because the studies it was helping the students and the teachers to be face-to-face, side by side, and help each other. And also, the student will learn from his sheikh or his teacher. He will study from him the books in fiqh and in the language, also grammar. And also, he will take the education and the morals. Here we talk about to take the sheikh or the teacher as a role model, to see how the sheikh implement these sciences in order to avoid any misunderstanding, as the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, told us. Who Allah wants him good, he will dig deep in this religion, and this understanding of the religion lead to unity. In the past, the scholars, when they went out of the scholars, we can say there are universities like today. When you are graduated from the council, the sheikh introduced this student who got graduated to the village or a place, and he will find there the students, and he will open his own council or school between brackets. And here I use council instead of school, and teach the students and also teach them how to implement with the moral and correct understanding in order for them to live in the community without going off the correct path. So I see that was their road or path in Senegal, Mali, and also Morocco. So it was a correct way that helped us all to live in peace and unity. Also, the scholars, as Dr. my previous colleague said, they used to teach them how this connection between the student and the sheikh. So they were controlling the understanding of the community and the students. This concept lead to peace or to fight. So the sheikh know how to filter all these concepts. Unfortunately, currently, all these connections, they are cut, and anyone graduated from any school or university work on his own way, and all invite to his own concepts. For that, the community is separated because there is no imam for the community or no one to be as reference to show them the correct path again. And that will lead to a great danger and risk. Also, what is different in the different economical level, but also sometimes in Aqidah. And when there is difference in Aqidah, as we know, belief is a great thing. If someone believes in something which is different from the community, that will lead to a great problem. That will lead to a great danger. So it is very important, if we want to have coexistence and peace and unity, we have to find a common path to study together, and also to use the modern principles. So the graduation of universities and schools is not for the sake of certificates, but also with the great understanding, with the great morals, with the knowledge how to implement the theoretical knowledge we gained from these entities in the community. This is very important. This is the first point. The second one, what we say in the Sufi way, it's not about the Sufi here, but also we talk about the Salafi way. So we can say, if we see something who use few words, you will know he is Salafi or Sufi from his own words. If he used as-sahih without knowing any of the Arabic language, you know he is Salafi. If he used al-ruh, al-maqamat, al-ma'rifa, these words, you will know he is Sufi. But currently, these methods and ways, they are fighting each together. And everyone would like to say that he is right and the other is wrong. And that's only because of individuals and the separation. With all these parties, there is a problem. The problem with the Sufis, that a lot of what we say in Senegal the Islamic houses or the majlis where there is imam who know a lot of people, and also the religious education. So now they are suffering of problems.
وعندما يقولون السلفيون والوهابيون
When the Salafis and Wahhabis say that they also have a problem in terms of reaching a full understanding, because if they hear something from the Sufis, they want to, without having the proper knowledge and without having the proper understanding, and this is something that reduces the ability to reach the full understanding of Sufism. They believe that Sufis have a wrong creed and so on. And this is a major problem that we're facing. If we want to resolve this problem, we have to have a good relation between all of these groups that is based on the so-called the majalis of the so-called a proper understanding. We must focus on these approaches that were used by our scholars, and definitely we need to resolve this problem through mutual understanding. Thank you. Thank you, and God bless all of you. And God bless you. Thank you very much for hosting me. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheikh Taha.
I'm sure the interpreters have been translating throughout, but shukran for giving us an understanding of Islam in Gambia and, the importance of seeking knowledge of deen and using it properly, that we can propagate Islam, inshallah. We go on to our next speaker now. Sheikh Ahmed Al-Badawi, have you managed with the sound? Sheikh Badawi, has the sound been resolved on your side? If you could unmute.
His audio is not connected, so I think there are some technical issues. We can move to Brother Mansa Bilal.
Okay, we are just having technical difficulties from the side of our speakers. We apologize for that. Dr. Mansa Bilal, I know you were on concluding remarks, but we have unfortunately had to change our schedule. We still look forward to your insight, inshallah. He's an associate professor of sociology at Morehouse College in the USA, and inshallah, he'll be giving us some insight as well. Dr. Mansa, I hand over to you.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Shukran, Sister Naima. Ramadan Mubarak to everyone. I'll add a little bit as I was planning to do concluding remarks. Wait, is Sheikh Badawi on? I see his camera. Do we have audio? Oh, okay. So what I'll do instead of concluding remarks here is I'll offer about 10 minutes of some thoughts on more challenges that are more transnational than any one country. I think each country we look at gives us a nice case study of some of these trends. But for example, we heard Dr. Jain, Muntaga Jain, mention that the Murid Brotherhood in Senegal has intentionally created spaces to make sure that the voices of women and youth are heard. This is something that is an important practice because it points to a continent-wide and dare I say ummah-wide challenge today in our communities. And if we're talking about Africa, we're talking about a continent where the overwhelming majority of the population is young. And anywhere, the majority of the population, with the exception of a couple of countries that have tried a one-child policy that resulted in some odd sort of gender demographics, but the typical human community actually will have more women than men. And one of the things that Muslim communities everywhere, and very much so across Africa, are now facing is the need to really, even in spaces like this, in your everyday symposium of academics, in your everyday meeting of people who are going to be thought leaders for how Islam will be understood and practiced in coming years, need to increasingly be spaces where the voices of young people and the voices of women are not just heard, but are part of the leadership. They're part of the decision making. And why do I say this? We see it in places where there has been, for example, a campaign to end female circumcision. without consulting actually the women who largely are responsible for practicing this ancient practice, which actually precedes Islam throughout Africa. But as people became Muslim, we find that it's a practice that has come to be understood by the everyday Muslim in much of Africa. We're talking mostly Northern Africa, but it goes into parts of the South, as far south as Kenya. We know the Kikuyu people have long practiced female circumcision as well. This is not just a majority Muslim parts of Africa discussion, where the social structures that are intertwined with a practice like this are so deeply embedded in the lives of people who have not been thoroughly sort of revolutionized in how they relate in terms of community, often by urbanization and becoming Western schooling, more formal schooling types of professions. Those who remain less formally schooled, those who remain in more rural areas, or who urbanize but remain marginalized by the more formal economy, we find they continue to have the traditional social practices and structures connected to something like female circumcision, which became an issue with colonization and has not gone away as an issue with the formal structures of colonization, politically speaking, going away. And so it's an example of the kinds of changes that are being addressed, have been being addressed perhaps in a mode that's not most effective, but that as women themselves are beginning to take up the mantle of, sorry, I thought I locked my door. My 2-year-old has no respect for daddy being in meetings. The change in idiom as people are now addressing female circumcision is increasingly in an Islamic discourse, right? And even if there are those who are wanting to see the practice significantly changed, eliminated, it's no longer in this language that was brought with colonization of this is a savage practice, a barbaric practice, this sort of thing. It's increasingly a question of what is the filth of circumcision, you see? And so I think that this points to something, and that this is the gender dimension. But when you think about the youth dimension, there's a similar kind of parallel that we have to really begin to bring young people in, move older people to listen more and talk less, right? To those younger people about how it is that they are connecting Islam and Islamic knowledge and Islamic belief, Islamic ritual, Islamic practices with the rest of their lives, with how they will establish their families on an economic basis, yeah, with how they will pursue and think about the other dimensions of education, right? And if we think about the mass media as part of the education of our youth, I think we begin to see some of the directions in which we have challenges, because currently much of the mass media that is educating Muslim youth around the continent is not controlled by Muslim elders and Muslim communities. It's cultural imports, again, from often from former colonizing countries, but even from other Muslim countries, often in non-Muslim countries. I'm thinking now of India as well. But my wife from Ghana grew up watching Bollywood films. She grew up watching films from Egypt, as well as films from Nigeria's, we call it Nollywood industry, right? So in the Anglophone environment of West Africa, you have many Muslims who have grown up being very much influenced by this kind of programming that is in fact impacting the things that we think of education as being that which will impact, right? And unless you have a community like the Murids of Senegal, the Muridiya have traditionally run their own schools in rural areas. And so they've had community input in ways that could more holistically educate their children. simultaneously teaching them how to be economically successful, simultaneously teaching them deep spiritual practices that will ground them in their Islam. So they have had a more holistic education system. But we ask the question about communities where the Muslim school is literally just where you go to memorize some verses of Quran, where you observe a teacher in how they implement their understanding of Islam, but perhaps not in all of the spheres anymore. It's now in a weekend school, and so you're not necessarily, the young students aren't seeing the teacher and how they deal with their family, and how they deal with their employees, and how they deal with political matters and this sort of thing. It's becoming more narrow, right? And this is part of modernization. So I'm going to begin to wrap here, I think, in the interest of moving the program forward. That was about 10 minutes. But I want us to really begin to think about the challenges facing us if we are finding Muslim women and Muslim youth not being reached by the formats and the platforms currently being used to try to propagate Islam. This is extremely important and speaks to the future of the deen on the continent.
Shukran, Dr. Mansa. I think that was some very important insights, especially on the spot. So shukran for that. I think two important things to highlight. One is I work in policy as well, and we cannot develop interventions without end user engagement. So if we are going to have youth programs, we cannot be developing it without engaging our youth. If we're going to have interventions to empower women in Islam, we cannot do it without their input. And so you've made a very important point about bringing individuals into platforms of leadership. And I think as the World Muslim Communities Council, Dr. Ali, you may agree with me, that's one of the objectives of the council, to try and empower our youth to take that center stage, to take almost responsibility for their own interventions. As youth, we cannot be reactive Islamic youth. We have to be proactive. And so shukran for that very important message. And also, I think a second point was challenging our Islamic education systems. Globally, in Africa, we've got, to some degree, an established way of teaching Islam, but we've got to make sure that we continuously maintain and empower the systems, those who teach it, and the youth who learn within the systems, because that's the way we're going to take Islam forward. And we need to make sure we equip our youth with the right understanding, the right perspectives on Islam, because of the misconceptions that are out there. So Allah protect and guide us all, inshallah. So shukran for that. Very insightful. Sheikh Ahmed Badawi, we can see you, alhamdulillah, but I'm hoping we can hear you now, inshallah. Can you try to unmute? Can we have our Arabic interpreter perhaps check with Sheikh Badawi about unmuting?
Sheikh Badawi, salamu alaikum.
Sheikh Badawi, assalamu alaikum. Sheikh Badawi, to the far left of the screen, you have the microphone icon. Click it so there wouldn't be a red sign on the microphone. This means the microphone is active when the red sign is gone. You can click it.
Shukran, Dr. Nasser, for that. Inshallah. Next time.
Naima, thank you so much for your work. Thank you.
Shukran.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ali Boma from Chad, he will speak on behalf of Imam Ahmad, Mufti of Chad. So can you ask him to turn on the microphone and he will speak on behalf of
Shukran for that. Brother Ali Boma, can you hear us? Can you unmute on your side? You're still on mute.
مرحبا السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. You can begin, inshallah.
مرحبا أهلا وسهلا.
Welcome. Hi. How are you?
Brother Ali, You can speak
نعم. عربي نعم.
Mufti. Yeah. Inshallah.
مرحبا.
Welcome. I would like to welcome each and every one of you. Peace be with all of you. Hello.
تفضل نسمعك تفضل انطلق.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Peace be with all of you. Peace be with you. I wish you many happy returns. I would like to congratulate you and congratulate all Muslims on the occasion of the holy month of Ramadan, and I hope we would enjoy the holy month of Ramadan next year as well. We apologize on behalf of His Eminence, the Mufti of Chad, because he has had an urgent meeting, so he is busy and he could not come in person and participate with us in this webinar. As for this webinar, it is very important. It tackles a highly important topic. It is true that the Muslim communities in Africa, Islam in Africa started and emerged a very long period, a very long time ago. And Islam spread in Africa. And we have many Muslims in Africa, and they have proven that they are a great asset to the African communities, and they continue to spread in Africa. Especially here in Chad and in the coastal African countries, we have unity among Muslims who are quite united and who live in peace and live and enjoy more peace compared to other communities. They have no sense of extremism, and if it hadn't been for the dangerous phenomena of terrorist groups, Boko Haram, in the coastal area, they try to undermine the social fabric and peaceful coexistence among Muslims there with the other non-Muslim communities. Despite that, and despite the attempts by the terrorist group Boko Haram, they could not undermine the sublime values of Muslims in West Africa and in the coastal areas. And despite all of the suffering and all of the terrorist attacks conducted by terrorist groups there, Muslims still managed to maintain their moderate nature, and they continue to support the government entities to combat terrorism and to combat these dangerous and criminal groups. Muslims in Africa, like Muslims all over the world and globally, in the holy month of Ramadan, we have a sense of solidarity and brotherliness and commitment to conducting prayers in mosques, and mosques witness large numbers of Muslims flocking to pray in congregation. There's a great deal and a genuine sense of faith, and we see young people, young men and young women, and even the elderly, all of them enjoy a sense of commitment to conducting religious practice during the whole month of Ramadan. We see a major sense of compassion and mercy amongst them. We should not forget that even governments there, they encourage Muslims and support Muslims and encourage them all the time to conduct the endeavors that lead to peacefulness and peaceful coexistence with other communities. So Muslims in Africa, and particularly in Chad, they have been playing a major role. Muslims in Chad, they embraced Islam in the 2nd century of Hijrah. So Muslims have been around in Chad for a very long period of time. They embraced Islam in the 2nd century of Hijrah. Therefore, we see they adopt the school of Imam Malik in terms of jurisprudence. And the vast majority of Muslims in Chad are from the Sufi groups, the Tijani approach, which spreads more widely in Western Africa and in Chad. most Muslims learn the Holy Quran and recite the Holy Quran in the katatib or traditional Islamic schools, which are still around in Chad and the countries of the region, and particularly the African coast countries. They learn the Holy Quran, memorize the Holy Quran in the katatib or traditional Quranic schools, in addition to the government schools and the French schools or the French English schools, according to the different approved languages in those countries. Moreover, as for challenges, there are major challenges that Muslims are facing nowadays. Among those challenges, we see that the foremost of these challenges actually is the lack of the proper potential for Muslims in Africa in terms of services and raising awareness and spreading the culture of combating extremism, and also spreading a moderate message or a message of moderation, despite the fact that the extremist groups have caused a great deal of suffering for Muslims and for the public, and put them into abject poverty by plundering their belongings, as we have seen in Nigeria and in Central Africa, in Chad Lake and in Mali and in Burkina Faso. All of these areas have suffered extensively because of those extremist groups. Moreover, and despite the fact that charitable organizations and charitable societies are doing and have been doing their duty in those areas, yet their efforts are not enough. We need more projects. We need two projects, a project for development and a project for conveying the correct message of Islam, because the generations that are the new generations, all young people here are affected by this rhetoric, and to be able to convince them, and we need some sort of cultural development and economic development for those young people to ensure that they do not fall prey to the extremist and terrorist groups and spreading violence, because these groups always target those young people because of unemployment and poverty, and they attract them and they send them wrong messages and they brainwash them into adopting extremist concepts. I believe this is a major challenge for the Muslim nation in those areas. Another element as well is unifying the efforts between the different Islamic organizations in the Middle East, in Africa, in Asia. All of them have to play a major role.
So as a suggestion, we need to have an annual meeting every 1 year or 2 years to group between the leaders of the religious leaders in order to negotiate and also discuss why the youth join these extremist groups. Africa, this is new to Africa. And that was happened because of Boko Haram group and jihadist groups in the Arabian countries in North Africa. All these reasons push us more to find the main reasons why the youth, they are joining these extremist groups and they are joining these criminal acts that harm Islam and its also picture. For that, we need to stand together to be a firm wall against all these extremist groups in order not to put traps for these weak youth, for these poor youth. And also let's say they are not well educated about Islam. They don't know the tolerance. They don't know forgiveness about this religion. So it's easy to attract them and to convince them about these wrong actions. I reckon, even though with these challenges, even though that Muslims in Africa, they are in a good shape, but they need more support. We are talking about all the types of support, financial support, educational support, and also we need to have dua to reform the situation, a moderate dua or scholars to transfer the correct message, the tolerant message of Islam, and to warn these youth in falling with these extremist groups. What we noticed in Chad, the World Council for Islamic Affairs, they have an entity for dua, and they established a union, international union for coastal countries. They held webinars, lectures, and they exerted a lot of efforts in order to educate the people and raising their awareness, even in the local radio, and also they participated in the local webinars, and that was very positive in order to raise the community awareness and also to transfer the correct message in the community, which was very helpful in convincing the youth not to join these bad groups, especially Boko Haram group, the extremist group.
Brother Ali, Jazakallah khair for that insight.
Thank you.
Shukran for your time, especially for stepping in on behalf of Imam Ahmed as well. We really appreciate that. And it's interesting to know, we're listening to all the speakers today from the different countries in Africa, and we're looking at Islam from a very different perspective. And I think it's a lesson for us to take, inshallah, that as African Muslims, we have a responsibility to uphold what we have. And inshallah, be pioneers of Islam going forward. We must be ambassadors, and Allah keep us steadfast, inshallah. To be steadfast is more difficult than to have bouts of empowerment. So shukran for that.
Thank you so much. كل عام وأنتم بخير.
Ameen, inshallah. Dr. Mansa, I know you had prepared the concluding remarks, so we're unfortunately not going to be able to host our other speakers due to technical difficulties. So we'll be concluding our program now. Dr. Mansa, if you have any concluding remarks to make, you're welcome to go ahead. Otherwise, I can take over.
Okay, thank you very much.
Shukran.
Thank you very much. Shukran.
Thank you, Sister Naima. Brief concluding remarks. I want to bring everyone's attention to something that may often get missed at this time. Starting in the year 2015 and ending in the year 2025, we are in the UN decade for people of African descent. And what that means is there's another platform through which we can have our voices heard, provide perspective, information, analysis, model programs that can be highlighted. This is a time when communities or populations that may not even form communities in some cases in places. For example, my normal teaching job is at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm currently in the UAE teaching at the American University of Sharjah. And this is a place where, unless it's the very recent immigrants from different African countries, there are large numbers of Sudanese in my class. We will have some Nigerians on campus. And if I go into Emirates like Dubai or Abu Dhabi, larger populations of Africans from different countries that you may find actually in concentrated neighborhoods. But the African descended, what are referred to as locals, what we call in America the longtime citizens, you don't find communities of these people easily here. And that's partially due to the ancient practice of integrating people into families. But one of the outcomes of that, I'm finding it's common for students to not know that there was an Indian Ocean slave trade network, and that for much of the last 400 to 500 years, that meant the opposite of the case of South Africa, right, where people are being brought from the Malay area into Africa. This was also moving large numbers of Africans into different Indian Ocean coastal societies, from Southern Arabia, even all the way up to Turkey, into what was then Persia, what's now Iran. That there are these communities of African descended people who have been rendered invisible. And coming from America, where we have a fairly robust discussion about the African diaspora, what I found is that much of the African diaspora being referenced in the United States is the Atlantic world diaspora. There is much less sort of acknowledgement and connection to the Indian Ocean world diaspora. But what's important is that the Indian Ocean world diaspora is a very Muslim diaspora. So we're talking about African Muslims, not on the continent of Africa. We're talking about African descended peoples who in many cases have maintained communities and thus have maintained African culture. And this is something that we want to gain a better understanding of, and gain an understanding of how there's a sort of consistent social ranking that we refer to in sociology as stratification, where we find many of these communities of African descended people in India, they're known as Habshis, in Pakistan, Shidis, in India also as Sidis, and in other places, other names, but where they have communities, often those are marginalized communities, rather materially deprived communities. And this is a time, the UN Decade for People of African Descent is a time to bring national governments, regional governments, local governments, a level of awareness about the need to address these sorts of communities being marginalized. And in places like here in the UAE, as I said, there's no African descended long-term community that you can find that's marginalized, but you can still find practices of people saying things like what came out recently in a trial of a former head of state of Africa who will go unnamed, but his prosecuting lawyer was referred to as a flat-nosed slave. And so these sorts of sort of not yet really problematized practices that permeate Muslim communities, right, in direct contravention to the sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the teachings of our religion, that this is the kind of practice that can only thrive in silence. And so I think one of the things that we have to begin doing to address Islam in Africa is addressing colorism, which is related to, but not always the same as racism. If we are going to elevate Muslims, then we have to begin to elevate all Muslims, and talking about it is an important first step. So that is as a concluding remark that sort of broadens our discussion of Africa from the continent to the diaspora, really around the world, I think is an important note to sort of end on and have some dialogue about. Inshallah.
Inshallah. I mean, shukran for that very, again, insightful input. And I don't know if I'm opening a can of worms at the end of the program, but to say we need to, as African Muslims, challenge the concept of We do not need to be saved. I'm sure you're looking in the States, in the West. A lot of my experience in terms of working with colleagues internationally is you're Muslim and you're African. Let's help you. Let's empower you. We don't need that. We have Islam, which has given us all the empowerment that we need. And I think we need to own it. We need to take ownership, because the minute we leave ownership, we then allow other communities to think they need to intervene when Allah has given us everything we need. And inshallah, I hope that this is a take-home message from today from all our speakers. If we look at Chad, we had input from Senegal, we had input from Gambia. There's so much that we need to be cognizant of, maintaining that culture of community and sense of community, especially when we leave our countries. So we're going into different communities, yes, to study. We're entering different societies that may primarily be non-Muslim, but we need to not shy away from our Islamic identity. And I think that, inshallah, is going to be the way forward, is to hold on to identity, keep that community culture, inshallah, and, hold firm into the rope of Allah, because this world can really challenge the way we try to represent ourselves as Muslims, particularly African Muslims, when Africa was such a stronghold for Islam for many, many years, and we don't even know that. I'm sure you're speaking about students that you had experience with there in the UAE. I work in a university setting here in South Africa as well, and we have students who are not aware of their roots, who come from other African countries, and are not aware of the wealth of Islamic knowledge they're coming from, and that they're leaving behind. And so, inshallah, I think this is something, even as the council, that we keep in mind when we have our interventions. And inshallah, Allah, let us be the flag bearers of Islam in the way that we're supposed to be, and protect us and guide us always. So today, I conclude the program. I say shukran to everybody for all of your input. And we thank the World Muslim Communities Council for having the platform to discuss important topics like we did today about Islam in Africa and the way forward. And to all our speakers, we say shukran, jazakallah khair, to all of you for your input. It's really valuable, and please continue the work you're doing in all of your countries. And inshallah, until we meet again, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran, sister.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much.
Recording stopped.
Shukran, Dr. Yusuf. I just want to see, I see the recording has stopped.